You know, for
Happy birthday, Ola.
Happy birthday to you.
This is February the 25th, 1989. You were born February the
28th,
28th,
1909,
1909. And you were born where?
in West Texas at the Starved Out.
Starved Out. That was, why was it starved out?
It's because we made 2 crop failures there. We just called it the Starved Out because we had to leave. We just starved out.
Couldn't make it.
Couldn't.
That was the one that was out west of Hermley.
That's right.
Okay, and you started school where?
It's Sandy.
It's north of Stratford, between
Yes.
east of Byers.
Yes, east of ours.
Okay, and where did you meet Roy, or when did you meet Roy?
I don't remember when I first met Roy. He was just there's neighbors to us, and I just don't remember too much about the first time I ever met.
Did they have the store there when you first remember, or was that put in later?
That was put in later.
And you and Roy married on
January the 16th, 1929.
1929. Okay, and that was. Have your kids heard the story of the chivalry that took place after Mom and Dad married?
I don't recall if they have.
That what they all met at Lone Hill School, wasn't it? And then went over to Chivalry, you and Roy?
Yes, we were spending the night over at Reeford Everett's, but the group that Chivalry just met down at Lone Hill and walked through the pasture up through there to his house.
Something was said about them walking across the tank dam, and they said if they'd known that Mother and Daddy were married, they'd have thrown them in the tank dam.
I believe that's
Thrown
right.
them in the tank out there. I'm good, okay. I still call it a tank. Most people don't anymore. Okay, now we got you married, and then when was Doug born?
1930,
And
December the
December
3rd, 1930.
And you said he was born where?
Up on what we call the Trammell place, up west of the store, about a half a mile, west of the Green Store or Highway 18 up toward Byers.
Okay, and then Norma Ruth's second child. What's her birthday, or when and where was she born?
She was born here at Stratford, 1934.
It's bad to call on.
That's just telling everybody how old I am.
Okay, and then Louise is the baby.
Louise is a baby.
We'll have to edit this thing to get Louise out of it.
She was born down at the little house by Lone Hill School down at the spring.
Oh.
Okay, and then you and Roy ran the store for several years.
Yes,
So we all get in the
13
film.
years, I think.
13 years.
We'll
Okay,
never
and
be
Doug and Norma both started school at Lone Hill,
At Lone Hill,
and Louise didn't start school until you moved to Hayworth.
that's right.
Sit over here and distract some of this comedy going on over here.
Okay, you moved to Hayworth in 41 or 42, somewhere along.
41, in December of 41, right after Pearl Harbor.
Okay, I remember that day quite clearly. Like I said a while ago, I wanted to go, and I got left at home. That's the story of my life. I wanted to get left at home.
It was kind of a dirty deal.
What was it? Do you, Doug, Norma, do you remember about the incident of eating in the store down there somewhere that Dad laughed about?
You remember it?
No, I don't. What was that?
Well,
Was it on the trip down?
yeah. Somewhere the other side of
Atoka.
Atoka, there's an old country store. It's still there, but it's not open today, but the old building's still there. We stopped there, and there's a good 4 inches of snow on the ground, and Aunt Bessie and Uncle David had graciously taken us home, or taken us down there in their nice warm car. And Dad followed in an old 28 Chevy with the dogs and the turkeys and all of the livestock.
What few household goods.
Yeah, and what few
No,
household goods we had.
There's a truck that brought our household.
That's true. But he did have some of them on that old.
Was this our truck?
No, we hired a truck.
Okay.
to take us. take the
And we
furniture
stopped,
off.
why don't you tell him that, tell us about the store, how we stopped in there and ate.
Oh, yes, it was too cold to sit in the car and eat, and we couldn't get out and eat. And we walked up on the porch of the store, and David said, "Is this the Jot 'em Down store?" They said, "Yes, I guess it is." All the old tie hackers sitting around there, and they just looked at us. We had a good lunch. Grandmother had cooked up fresh meat, and we had a nice lunch, and we spread it out on their counter. They let us spread it out on their counter and eat. They stood around and watched us. But David said as we went in, "This is the Jot 'em Down store," and they just looked at him and said, "Yes, I guess it is." So it was quite comical. We could have wrung his neck for saying that.
He liked to do things like that.
He did. He was so sweet, so funny.
Okay, let's see. You said Louise started school down there,
And
Hayworth.
Yes,
and then you went from Hayworth to
Harry,
Perry. What year did you go to Perry?
1945. The winter of
Winter
1945.
1945.
The latter
A
part
little
of the
bit
year.
difference in those seasons there, wasn't it?
Well, yes, we moved just about Christmas time to Perry, 1945.
And that's where Doug graduated from high school.
That's right,
And then you moved to Okmulgee.
Okmulgee.
You remember what year was that?
Was it 1950?
50, somewhere around there?
When did you graduate?
You graduated from high school in
I
49.
graduated in 49, and I spent a year in school after that, and we moved over there in 51.
51.
To Okmulgee in 51.
And that's where Norma Ruth graduated from high school.
That's right, 52.
And then Louise, they had to take her back down to finance, get her out of school.
That's right. I graduated in Longview in 1955. I graduated, 279 in a class of 300, and it didn't hurt my feelings any until the principal said it was a rather stupid class overall.
Okay, now let's add something here right quickly that we didn't do a while ago. Doug, you're the oldest. You married first. You have 2 children. Can you tell me their names?
Okay, Mariola's the firstborn, and she has 2 children. Her name is Mariola Taylor, and she just had her second day before yesterday. And then there's Beth, and married to Tolly Goodwin, and of course Mariola's married to
Sammy's his name.
Sammy. Heck, I forgot that. But anyway, Sammy and Beth's married to TJ or Tommy, and she has 2 children, and Andrea and Jay.
You caught up with me. You have 4 of them now.
I have 4,
Okay.
and they're great. They live down at Ennis, Texas. Mariola, of course, still lives in Longview, or Whiteville, actually.
Okay. Norma?
I have 3 children, two girls and a boy. Oldest daughter's Catherine Smart, and she has 2 children, Stephen and Ann, and expecting a 3rd one. And they live in Austin, Texas. And Cindy, second child, middle child, married to Colin Lovett, and they live in Washington, D.C., and they have no children. And John Boy, the baby, Jonathan, is not married. He's 20 years old now and is engaged. And that's it.
So you said 2 grandchildren and expecting the 3rd one. You'll catch
Expecting the
up.
3rd one in April, about
You'll
middle of
catch
April.
You'll catch up one of these days.
That's right.
Now what about the baby over here?
Well, I got one baby, and her name's Leanne. She's 23, and she's still living at home. And says she will till me or her one gets married. And she's Of course, like I said, not married, so I'm not as old as everybody else. I don't have any grandchildren yet, but I'm gonna try to spoil everybody else's grandkids till mine get here, just like I did with their kids.
Just wait a while, dear. You'll make it one of these days.
There's some kind of
That's
unwritten
right.
law.
I got their kids good and spoiled for them forever. I got mine. So
There's some kind of unwritten law that God has. You can't have any grandkids till you quit thinking you know.
Oh, when you were a baby or when you were a child, you lived, Grandpa and Grandma and lived with his parents quite a bit, didn't they? Or off and on?
They lived with us. Yes, we farmed their place, the old Jenkins place, and grandmother and granddaddy lived in the house with us.
What kind of people were they? Can you tell us a little bit about them?
Well, I don't know just how to start that out, or what do you mean by that?
I've always understood that Grandpa Jerry was rather blunt spoken, maybe a little high tempered.
Very.
Was he a redhead also, or?
His hair was white ever since I can remember. I'm sure it must have been red.
Had to be. Well, what about her?
Well, she was a very tiny little woman, very highly educated, very precise in everything, always right. And everybody looked up to her because she was highly educated. She attended Peabody College. And she grew up back in the slave days. The Rays had slaves, but the Jenkinses did not believe in keeping slaves. So grandmother never did know how to work until she married Jerry Jenkins, and she had to go to work then because they had no slaves, but she had to learn how all over again, or learn how from scratch to work. So she was pretty spoiled.
Was Uncle Jerry from Tennessee also, originally?
I don't know.
Okay.
Arkansas, as far back as I know, we've got the history of that, but I just never go into it.
Can you tell me the story about the tobacco?
Yes. I don't know if this
Never
needs to be repeated because I'm the only one that ever had the nerve. Yeah, that had the nerve to tell it. But my granddaddy smoked, and he bought tobacco in a big sack, and he kept it in their room. Well, we had an outdoor toilet. We didn't have bathrooms in those days, so every morning, grandmother would go in, she'd get her a handful of that tobacco and go out to the toilet, and she'd put that in her mouth and she'd chew it. Well, his tobacco disappeared fast, and he went and told Clay, said, those boys are getting my tobacco, and of course he was going to thrash them. And I knew that wasn't right. And I said, now, Dad, the boys didn't get that tobacco. I said, grandmother gets that. And she goes out to the toilet and she chews it. And I got the thrashing of my life because I said grandmother chewed tobacco because she made me out a liar about it. And I didn't lie about it. That's the truth. And I never cared for her very much. I loved my granddaddy, though, as mean as he was.
Okay, now let's switch over to Grandmother Jenkins' family. They left Tennessee, or Uncle Tom left Tennessee because of some kind of problem. And then he came where, to Harrison, Arkansas,
That's right.
and that's where he got tied up with Grandpa.
That's right.
And did you say that Grandpa Clay went back to Tennessee to bring the grandmother Gooch and the family back
Yes.
with him?
They come back in the wagon. They forded the Mississippi River.
Mm. Where was the old man? Was he dead by then?
Yes, he was dead. He died and left the family. At one time, he may have had some money. I don't know. I've heard my mother tell that they had swung him up twice, or put the rope around to tell where he had buried his money. But whether he did ever, whether he had buried or what happened to it, I don't know. But Norma wanted to know about his life as a minister or in the church life. But I have heard my mother say that she never did know of him wearing a colored shirt, that he always wore a white starched shirt even to the field to plow. Was very religious man. I don't think he was a ordained minister, but a deacon or something very high in the church.
I remember grandmother always saying, Papa, wasn't that what she called him? Papa was a deacon.
Mm-hmm. But he always had to have that white starched shirt, even though he went to plow.
Wearing in the field.
Oh.
That would be too rough, wouldn't it?
And he wore his guns to the field, didn't he?
Yes, in those days you kept your gun pretty close to you. But anyway, he died, and Uncle Thomas was the oldest, and he got into some trouble, and he had to leave, and he left out and went to Arkansas and had to just leave the family. Well, he made a place for them to move, and he got Dad to go back and drive them through or bring them from Tennessee to Arkansas. And that's where Dad met Mother.
How old was she then, you know?
She was in her 20s, and Norma said she'd like to know about her. Do you want to tell it about it? Marrying on the horse?
Oh, yeah. I've always heard that Grandmother and Granddaddy were married on horseback.
She was a great lover of horses. And she loved to handle the stock, and she was quite a horse.
Mm-hmm.
She could manage the horses. And they were married at Jasper, Arkansas.
Were they?
Mm-hmm. On the horse out there on that.
Well, then meet the circuit rider out by the tree.
Was we going to talk about next?
You said something about grandma.
With your grandmother?
No, I thought you were talking about your grandmother.
I think I said about what.
You think you said all?
I think I've said all I need to say about that.
Okay.
Why don't you, if you don't have something else, or someone else doesn't have something more important, why don't you tell us about some of those trips that you made in a covered wagon back and forth from Texas to Oklahoma?
Well, I can tell you a little about it. I didn't remember much about the first trip we came to Oklahoma. I was too small to remember too much happened on the road. But we come down and stayed 5 years, and I remember definitely our trip back. We'd made good money, and we went back with money in our pocket. We'd lived 5 years out on the Millen Elevator place, and we made money down there. Dad worked hard, Mother worked hard, and he had renters. And he made good money, but he never could seem to get the idea that if he'd just get back to Texas, Scurry County, that he could have 100 acres and farm it easy and make it. And when they did have a good crop, it was good. But when we went back, we had our covered wagon. We didn't have any furniture. We sold it all, but our beds, my mother was real good at keeping good beds, good warm beds. And we had a covered wagon, and then we had a hack. It was a very fashionable hack. Two-seated buggy, in other words.
Oh, neat.
And we had curtains on this hack we could put up, and this was their church thing. We drove it to town, and we drove it to church, but we rode to, that was one of the vehicles that we went out to West Texas in, and we had a little span of mules called Beck and Jenny. Just as cute as could be, and they pulled that hack. It wasn't heavy, but we rode in it. It was comfortable. We went back in style, but we lived there 2 years, and we started out again. But going in that covered wagon, I was only 6 years old, I guess, 7, or something like that. I wasn't very old. But I didn't know about the prairie and how it looked. But the last night we stayed on the road was out on the prairie. No house or anything. Sometimes we stayed in schoolhouses or old farmhouses and slept. Made our beds there and slept in out of the weather. But we didn't hardly make it to Hermley that night, and when we got out on the divide, well, all the roads and trails looked alike, and Dad said, I can't make it. We're just going to have to stop and wait till daylight. So we pitched our beds out and we camped. This is the first time I'd ever heard wolves howl. I thought it was the loneliest place I ever heard. Slept out there and the wind a blowing and the wolves a howling. And I was afraid. I'll never forget how afraid I was because I'd never seen anything like that or heard anything like it. But I finally did drop off to sleep and was glad when morning come, and we got up without our breakfast and went on to Uncle William's. It wasn't too far.
Now, Uncle William was
Aunt Alice's.
Aunt Alice's.
We went in.
Now that Aunt Alice being your mother's sister.
No, Dad's sister. Dad's oldest sister.
Okay. We
So-
have two Aunt Alice's. No, Aunt Alice and Aunt Annie. But I'm
So that was quite an experience. We'd come through towns and we'd stay in the wagon yard. You've always heard about getting your bottle and stay in the wagon yard. Well, we didn't have a bottle, but I spent many a night in the wagon yard, and we stayed comfortable in the wagon yard. It was warm.
They're kind of like the KOAs now.
No, it was just a kind of a barney.
Was it?
They'd take your horses and feed them.
Uh-huh.
And they had a room where we could take our beds in this, just a room, make our beds on the floor, but they'd have a place that we could cook a meal.
Yeah.
And it was warm.
It was equivalent of
We-
today's KOA then.
This was the forerunner of the modern motel. is what
Yeah.
A lot of people
Yeah.
say.
But we was so glad when we could stay in a wagon yard and didn't have to stay in some old schoolhouse, make our beds, because it was cold. We moved in cold weather. But you've heard of staying in wagon yards. Well, I stayed in several of them. And it was an experience all right.
I just wanted to do this so that we would all have it for Doug and Norma and Louise and all of you. I wish we had had something like this to do this type of thing a long time ago, where we'd have a whole lot more
Yeah,
stuff like this to keep on our mind.
I do too. Why don't we get her to tell us about the Harvard group?
Okay.
And just briefly tell us about,
That I know very little about. I'll tell you what I can.
tell us what you know if you don't mind.
I
About when they came through and married the two girls and left.
I really,
Harrison.
I don't know how. Now, Glenn probably knows more about that than I do.
Well, maybe you'll
because-
tell us then.
Maybe so, because I don't know very much about how they met. But I know Uncle Charlie come first and married Aunt Mattie first. And, oh, she was crazy about Uncle Charlie. But Uncle Jess come, and he thought Aunt Lily was about the prettiest thing he ever saw, and he begged Grandpa for her. And he made all kinds of promises that he'd be good to her. And he was. Uncle Jess is good to her. And that's about all I know. But they didn't live in Scurry County very long. They moved up in Moore County. And there wasn't but two families that lived in Moore County at that time, and that was Harvard's.
Oh, my goodness.
And there was a little school up there that they got a school teacher to come out and teach the two Harvard families. What?
I said, that's a huge county.
The last one going west in Texas, and there's only one north of it.
And they'd go to, that's where the Harvards got their education, was in this little one-room schoolhouse that they'd get a teacher out there, and she stayed at one of the Harvards all winter. You know, and they'd all walk up there and have their class.
Well,
And then they'd
excuse
come
me,
home.
Ola wasn't one of the cousins, one of the teachers, or one of the early teachers there.
I think maybe Pearl did teach up there a little while.
Pearl,
Cliff. But now they've had other teachers there too.
how did they ever get started to Moore County? How did they ever get up there? Or what caused them to go?
I don't really know. I just really don't know.
Now, you're saying that Granddad, Jerry Jenkins, and his family left Harrison and went to Scurry County.
Yeah, and I think it was kind of a caravan thing because Uncle Sam had his family along, Uncle William had his family along, Dad had his family along. It was just sort of a caravan of the Jenkins just went from Arkansas to Texas.
And as the story goes, it's because the Harvards wouldn't stay in Harrison, and Granddad wouldn't let his family be broken up, and so he went along with them.
I think that's right. But now how they went to Moore County from Scurry County, I don't know.
Well, those Rays in Harrison, Arkansas, make the statements that Uncle Jerry left here and all of his son-in-laws went with him.
Yeah. It was kind of a caravan deal. They went in wagons.
Well, some of them tell the story that Uncle Jerry, if you married one of his girls, you live there.
He was pretty bossy then.
And he met these two Harvard boys, and they married and into his family, and they wouldn't hear to it, so he picked up and went with them.
Yeah, I guess that's right. I don't know too much about it, but that's sort of the bottom line of it, more or less.
They say you're supposed to put those on before you
Well, James, you,
Thank you so much. You want to read it?
I know she heard you did
He's out here to get the rest of the balloons blown out.
got a lot of hair, doesn't he? How you
Nancy, did you?
Hello. Taking pictures. Glad you could come. Would you like to sign in? I'm Norma rolling up Miss Green's oldest daughter. How are you doing? I live in Phoenix, Arizona. Would you like to?
How you doing there?
This is David's son.
That's right. How you doing? I haven't seen you in a long time.
It's been, you know, you didn't have a gray hair.
Well, it has been a long time.
And I didn't have too many.
Anna, so you doing all right?
I'm the one she talked with.
I'm Norma Roland. Miss Green's oldest daughter. I'm glad to meet you. We're so glad you could come by. Are you? I'm Miss Green's oldest daughter.
We grew up down here around Lone Hill, them sand hills. And so somebody said today they went to school at Lone Hill. I said, if you ever went to school at Lone Hill, I knew. We appreciate them and their relatives this evening. I think it has been a family that they have lived in. And we're longing for them all to come back home and be with us again. So we appreciate them, and I'll say in the behalf of Doug, he and his father and his mother, his wives, and all of his relatives and friends, it's been a great honor of life to be associated with them through the years that have passed and gone. So I'm expecting to live with them throughout eternity. And I expect God to help us to live, shall I say, in this life until we can meet again in the great beyond. God bless you this evening. And so I count it an honor to know Ola this evening. So I wouldn't tell you how long I've known her. I wouldn't tell you what we did whenever we was kids. But I'll tell you one thing. And since she's become converted and living a Christian life, she's one of the greatest prayer warriors that God ever gave to mankind in this life. So we appreciate you, Ola, and may God abundantly bless you and lead you on. So I don't know what else to say. It looked to me like Doug said it all, but I appreciate the things that they have meant to us and what they have done. And this is an honor this evening to be with all of you good people that we have lived with and associated with across the years. God bless you is our prayers. Where you at, Doug? What else you want to do?
Well, I tell you, I said something about everybody, but I really didn't say much about Mother. But she's really been an influence wherever she's been.
That's right.
And the right kind of influence.
That's right.
And I remember when I was a little kid growing up in a little old shotgun house out here north of town, and that Mother had told me about Jesus. I know from the very first day I can remember, I knew about the Lord, and she told me about Him. And she not only told me about Him, but she made me realize that He was her Savior, and that He had made a difference in her life. And she passed that along to everyone that she could. She certainly did to me. And I know all of the children have been influenced by that, and she's just been a great mother. I don't know how to say that we just love you, Mom, and we really appreciate you. And I'm so glad that we got a chance to do this while she's still with us.
Sure.
I've passed by caskets a lot of times, and you have, and we thought of this, and my daughter and Dad kind of acted as a spark plug on this and helped get it going. And I said, this one, we'll do this more often. Have birthday parties and say thank you while people are still here.
That's right.
It's about time, I guess, that we cut the cake then, isn't it? Okay. Well, Mom, it's your cake.
I'll start it, the rest of it is coming. I'm not very good at it.
So you see what they put on it, Mother? They put on what your grandchildren called you. Grand, Tiny, Baby. Isn't that beautiful? What a wonderful thing.
Where's
Hi, Glenn.
I don't know if this thing will take.
What are you doing here with these other guys today?
Watching them.
Watching. Who's this right here beside you? What's your name?
This is my little cousin, Doug. Oh, yeah.
Doug, where do you live, Doug?
I live in Fort Collins, Oklahoma at the present time. Since I can't get to Texas, that's the best I can do.
Oh, well, it's good to have you in Stratford, Oklahoma.
Yes, thank you.
Everybody's having a good time at this
I think so.
What's your name?
This is my brother Darryl. My other brother Darryl.
Hello, Charles. How's the Jenny?
Just fine. We're keeping swept with electricity.
What are you doing this day?
I still work at Tinker.
Good. Okay, thank you guys.
Okay.